You're listening to A Bit Later, a Midlife stand-up podcast. I'm your host, Steve Ziegler, and I'm sitting down with comedians from across the country to find out why they are pursuing stand-up comedy and what they are learning about themselves at this stage in their lives. My first guest is Gretchen Dee, a San Diego native who started comedy just before her 37th birthday on August 2nd, 2025. She had always wanted to do stand-up since her 20s, and finally, life allowed her a schedule to do it. Humor and comedy have always been big components of Gretchen's life, and she has always felt that if you can laugh at it, you can handle it. She has produced 2 shows to benefit a nonprofit food bank because she feels that if you have access to a microphone, you should use it for good. You can catch her April 24th at Sunset Stand Up Presents in San Diego and May 9th at Kilowatt Brewing. Follow her on Instagram at NotSoSeriousGretchen. Fun fact, she collects cactus, as those are the only pricks worth her time. Let's jump into the combo with the very funny Gretchen Dee.
Yeah, it's like I said, I think there's a point where it's something that I always wanted to do. I always wanted to do stand-up because humor is something that in my life, like I grew up in a very turbulent household, and my sister and I were just always super close. We essentially kind of raised each other for the most part, even though 7 years apart, and she would always be stuck on permanent babysitting duty. But even through all of our trials and tribulations and all the rough times, I always found a way to make my family laugh. And also I used to get picked on in school and stuff like that. And then I kind of found my weird tribe essentially, not till I was a lot older. And humor, I've always kind of felt like if you can laugh at it, you can handle it. So I've had a lot of things happen in my life, and it's fun being able to make jokes about them now. I've like I said, grew up like super, super broke below the poverty line, turbulent households, got involved in some bad relationships when I was younger, escaped, restarted. And then I had found the love of my life, my late fiance. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, he got diagnosed with brain cancer, and then he had passed away. Then right before the shutdowns, but I swear that comedy is kind of why I'm still here and still staying sane. That was something we used to share is when he was going through treatment and stuff, we would sit down and he'd be too tired to do anything, but we'd watch stand-up comedy or we'd watch comedy to laugh while going through all that stuff. So I've always been a weirdo writer. So I've always been a journaler and put little notes in and stuff like that. So now it's really cool to be able to get the thoughts out of my notebook and out of my head or out of my phone on to people and seeing really good feedback from that.
That is a good feeling, and I appreciate you sharing all that. And it makes sense and kind of gets to the heart of what we're getting to is what drives you. You kind of answered the why stand-up question, so that's great. That's a great starting point. But I think there's a lot to really discuss there. Kind of taking it back to your upbringing and so did you grow up on the West Coast or what part of the America did you grow up in? And just share a little bit about that as much as you want.
Sure. I grew up in Poway, California, which Poway is usually known, if you're not familiar with San Diego, it's a suburb of San Diego. And they used to have this little slogan of the city in the country, but it's also known for where a bunch of football players now live, but it's very divided. So there's the Lake Poway area, which is all the multi-million dollar homes and software developers and all that stuff. And then there's the lower side of Poway, which is where the trailer parks and all that. So it's kind of a melting pot in all of the schools. And I grew up in a regular sized house, but when my parents divorced, my dad, it was fine. But when he divorced, my mom just had a really hard time holding down a job because she had a lot of mental things going on. So we always, growing up in that setting of just being always really broke and always, not just being the weird kid that didn't have the clothes that fit or were clean or, my mom wasn't exactly the most responsible human being. So a lot of times it was either that or she would just take me with her to go and hang out with all of her buddies at the beach and stuff like that. So I learned, like, I've always been kind of funny. So that's kind of where I grew up. And I've lived in a couple other places because, like, I lived in the Bay Area briefly with someone I was with for a very long time, and then moved to Vegas and got out of that, thankfully. Came back, and like I said, I wanted, yeah, yeah, that was a whole. I was with somebody for 7 years, and then I had this moment of realization. I'm like, oh my goodness, this guy is really bad. I don't want this to be the rest of my life. So I kind of like sneak packed and literally like sold jewelry and a firearm and escaped with a
That's a
police
Vegas
interceptor that
tale,
I
it sounds like.
yeah, I bought a police interceptor off Craigslist, and yeah, and away I went back to California.
I
I've
mean,
been told
hey,
I should
that's
write a book, but I don't know if I have the patience for that. So I'm just going to tell my wild tales on stage.
yeah, I mean, that's awesome to have that. Well, I mean, I'm sure it may not have been awesome in the moment, but to have that material to
Yeah.
draw from those experiences, yeah, that
Yeah.
the
And
TV. Sure.
oh yeah, so it's kind of fun. And now, like I said, like for the long time I've always wanted to be getting into it. I had a friend that was in Toastmasters, but she's also naturally funny. I'm like, hey, what if you like try like stand up or something? Because some of her stuff that she says, she'll have these super wild tales out of left field, but she's like, it's so normal to her. I'm like, dude, that's hysterical. You should tell that on stage somewhere at an open mic. But she ended up trying a class over at the mic drop in San Diego. I don't know if because there's like the mic drop in Phoenix, there's the mic drop in San Diego, and I think there's one in Texas. And I mean, don't quote me. I think there's one other one. I'm not sure, but they have a 6-week course with an instructor named Jesse Egan. And Jesse Egan has been 20 years. He won like San Diego's funniest person. He has a dry bar special. I think I remember seeing his special like during the lockdowns. I was like, oh, you know. So he runs a class, and my friend joined that. She said it was really rewarding, got a lot of feedback. And then eventually I was able to convince my employers to give me Saturdays off. So I was able to take his class. So I've only been doing stand up since August 2nd. Yeah.
Oh, it's August 2nd of this year or of
Yeah.
2025?
Yes.
Obviously, we're not in the future.
Sure. Yes.
Yeah.
From 2025.
We're 3 months in. I have no excuse. I should have known that. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
So August of last year. So you grew up kind of, obviously being funny to deal with the circumstances. I think a lot of people would relate to that, but also you're around a lot of adults. So I
Mhm.
guess make them laugh is also part of what,
Yeah.
instilled this in you, right? You're used to a tough audience in a way.
Definitely. And also like my mom, like she had a couple friends that were like trying to like so I didn't feel like I'm just some kid standing in the corner not talking. Like they would try to talk to me and I'd like joke. And I've always been like quirky and goofy, which is so funny because like I remember mom used to always be like, oh gosh, why can't you just act normal? Because I always make faces and I'm really just awkward and expressive and like, look at this cool bug. Oh, let me go climb this tree. And then just say a bunch of things that I'm like, curious about the world. So, yeah, humor is something that I've always just kind of had. And it's gotten me it's got me out of tough situations before. If you can like de escalate with humor, you know?
Yes.
Yeah, it's, I'm trying to think of like one example. There was Oh, I mean, it was kind of dumb, but it made me laugh and it actually de-escalated it as it was the guy that I escaped from Vegas to get away from. There was one point where he was like really nitpicking on everything and wanted me to do everything a certain way. And so I just started quoting the uh the queen from Coming to America, like anything you like. And somehow that worked to de-escalate it enough because he was like realized how ridiculous he was being just for a moment. But anyhow, I don't know. I'm new to these interviews, so please, you can tell me to
No,
shut up at any minute.
no. Me too. This is better than just straight up Q&A. I'm not trying to be Charlie Rose exactly. So, really just getting to the heart of like why we're all doing this, because I just a little bit about my background in terms of comedy. I in 2014 started producing like variety shows just for fun and like reading some of my essays, and then that turned into a business where my friend and I, here in Philly were booking shows, booking comics from 2014 through 2019. We ran a little theater. Ended up working with some people that went on to be bigger names and that are still like, or middle acts, a variety of things. And I started managing comics. COVID hit. I had wanted to get my own spot and just kind of never went back to it after that. Really more leaned into work. And then I think experiencing some losses over the past few years I've noticed that like oftentimes when there's a loss, I'll like a month later go to an open mic. And I started back in the fall, not long after you. I mean, I had performed a long time ago and sporadically in between. And so I've been going to mics consistently since January of 2026. So this is all. And then I was like, why don't why? There's a lot of people that are like 40 plus, like just starting this. Why not find out what's up with our generation and beyond? So, yeah, that's where we go. Yeah. So I haven't done a lot of podcasts either. I guess that's the short story there. So
Nice. Yeah, I used to be I mean, I still am, but I'm less because now this is another time-consuming, humbling hobby. I used to be really into jujitsu. I started, jujitsu. Yeah, jujitsu is one of the reasons why it gave me the courage to leave Vegas. But the reason why I'm mentioning that is something interesting that I'm noticing is that there's a lot of parallels between jujitsu and the comedy world. It's like similar circuits. And when it comes to jujitsu, you have like certain aspects of your game that will work on some people, but not others. So same thing with like certain jokes will work with certain audiences, but maybe not with others. Or everyone kind of has their own little vibe and style, and we're all a little strange, or it's something that we do to kind of help us through life. But again, it's like there's some people that start right away at like 15 or 16, and their whole thing is just, their whole pathway in jujitsu, for example, like that's all they have to do. And then there's people that are hobbyists that are like, hey, there's a call to do this strange hobby of ours. Let's, continue with that. Some people do it more casually. Some people want to, continue to rise up to the ranks of like Taylor Tomlinson or, Daniel Sloss or something like that. So it's kind of interesting because I'm seeing like, and there's a little bit of crossover, but overall, like, I think it's really interesting where you're saying how you've like stopped and now you're coming back in the game, because that's something you see a lot in jiu-jitsu too, is people will start and stop because life happens, so just an observation.
No, that's really cool to think about. And yeah, life happens. And also I think one thing that I am trying to work on myself is consistency. And I think comedy requires that. It requires that discipline, even if it's hitting one mic a week. For me, because I don't know what the ultimate goal is there. Do I want to be a touring comedian, or do I eventually want to produce? Would this turn into something like trying different things, but staying within the realm so you're not becoming overextended? Because I think that can often happen as well and take away from consistency. So I never drew that parallel about jujitsu and comedy.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you hear about it a lot, obviously, on like certain scenes. Those guys are into jujitsu. Comedians, of course, are into jujitsu. But I never really thought of it in the way that you just processed it. So that's really cool, and something that I'm sure keeps you on track as well. And
I like what you mentioned about the consistency, because just like you mentioned how it's important is to have at least some consistency of like getting out to an open mic, working on your stuff. I think that's something that you will also see in jiu-jitsu, where people get stuck in their comfort zone and it stops their progression. So they'll just keep doing the same thing over and over and over again, regardless on if it works or not. If it doesn't work, they'll just get mad and blame their surroundings. Or if you're not consistent enough, like for you to level up, unless you're like, I don't know, a freaking online jujitsu university, like you're supposed to put in the time and you have to prove, okay, I have earned leveling up in whatever, the belts or competitions or so on. So yeah, that's I like how you say the importance of consistency. And I think they're both humbling, because you really have to take a look at your stuff. Like I usually try to record my stuff and look back and be like, okay, I know this joke usually kills. Why didn't it kill in this room? Or did I say it differently? Did I trip up? Or looking back and be like, man, I really need to sit my ass still when I'm on stage instead of keep moving back and forth, or else I'm going to look like a crackhead. Things I'm learning to sit down and watch the footage back and taking
Yeah.
notes and applying, trying to condense and boil it down, distill to what works, and then cut out the filler.
Yeah, cutting out the filler. I've heard that before from people, and it was like the writing every day. I didn't realize that writing every day could just be like 10 minutes because as a writer, I'm always like, oh, if I don't do 1,000 words a day, which never happens, like if I don't write every day, if I don't write a page or whatever, but writing jokes or writing, even if you just write a premise and then you're working it out on the way to a mic. And as I'm saying this, I know there's a million comedy podcasts that have probably covered this topic before, but it is like, it's very true of just like at the very least, it's getting your brain activated, which is something that I'm also, concerned about with age. Not that I'm there yet, but you just don't want your mind and your skills to atrophy. And even doing this, like, we're on different coasts, but being able to have a conversation certainly helps in that process as well. That's the way I feel. Yeah. Sorry to pontificate, but
No, I like your mentioning the writing every day, because I've noticed my creativity is kind of like it gets turned on. It's just like a fire hose, and I'm just like, oh, I need to do something with it. So some of my best writing happens when I'm like on my commute or driving somewhere. Or one of my biggest things that I'm struggling with is I have this goddamn cat set that I really need to focus on and do for a clean comedy show. But my brain keeps coming up with all of these other ideas for a different set that I want to work on. I'm like, I need that part to shut up, but I don't want to lose that. I need to work on these goddamn cats. That's my struggle. So I am trying
to that point, I don't know if I could give you any cat material. I'm more of a dog person, but just like, do you, you're a cat person or no?
I like all animals. I just cats, I don't know. She does her own thing. She's cool,
Yeah.
But I have this joke that I've been working on, or this set that I've been working on, that I think I have it structured out. I just need to have it memorized and get the timing down. Where, like, I don't know, my cat's my best friend. The doctor was saying that she needs to lose weight. I don't think she does. I think she looks fine. She's not like, some slinky sphinx. She's like a tortoise. So or like a tortoise shell. She's tortoise shaped. Leave her alone. And then I started watching that America's Next Top Model documentary. So I'm doing this whole cats with bulimia, high paid models trying to look like kittens kind of bit. I'm not going to spoil all my jokes.
No,
But
you don't have to tell it all, but I like that. I like what you're doing there. That's really cool. That's funny. Um, I want to ask about clean comedy since you've mentioned it a few times. Is most of the work that you're doing clean on like
most of
Showcase?
it. Okay, so I have the dirtiest I've gone is I have this it's mostly clean. It's like PG-13. The only sets that I really have that I have dirty is like I wrote this set about basically the premise of it is like goes from like therapy, and then it's like how like AI people shouldn't use things for therapy. Then I have this like joke about like someone getting involved with therapy as like bringing in a third into their relationship, and and it ends up where I'm talking to my current boyfriend and how like we have this great relationship and our communication is wonderful. However, when it comes down to business, he always wants to resolve everything first before we get intimate, and how I wish that he could understand that we can be horny and disagree at the same time. And I go on this whole thing about like, I just kind of devolve into a hoary Palpatine. So I do this whole joke. So that's probably the dirtiest one, where I do like this Star Wars character voice and just
The
say, like,
Emperor.
joke, do it. And like, just do all these things. And it's super ridiculous. But that's probably as far as I go. I do have one that I've been working on, but it might have to save it for a late show. I'm kind of doing a play on like a lesson for men that need to understand consent, about pushing the envelope on things. And I talk about an experience where I was in a situation of sexual chicken where I put my thumb in somebody's asshole. But put my thumb in an asshole of an asshole. So that's why it's okay. And I did ask consent, and I go on the whole storytelling about that. But mostly I'm clean. Like I talk about my mom like cleaning the house with a leaf blower growing up, and like thinking our house was always haunted, and her doing an exorcism with a leaf blower. And yeah, so I talk about mostly stuff from my life, but I mostly try to do it a little bit more clean. Like my cat joke is squeaky. Um, it might allude to, nefarious behaviors like tomcats only want to date kittens or some stupid stuff I'm writing.
I get it. Yeah, yeah. I was just curious, and like I was wondering more about like what's the I guess there seems to be like jujitsu, and I'm gonna
Mhm.
stumble over it every time I say it for some reason. I think it's kind of like the different cliques. Like in Philly, I noticed that like at least what I'm doing now at open mics and what I'm used to is more just kind of blue stuff in general. Everybody's kind
Mhm.
of dirty. Um, I should say I would say I'll say 85%. And I was curious about like the San Diego scene. Is it like is there a sect of clean comics that you're kind of working a circuit of different you're getting booked on each other's shows and things like that, and then there's a whole other sect, and then you maybe intersect at open mics. Like what's the scene like is the question out
So the
there.
scene is a pretty good blend, honestly. I think the overall feeling for like San Diego on certain areas is like you don't want to do like obscenely dirty stuff because it's like they kind of that saying whole clean is green, so you're more likely to get paid gigs if you can
Mm,
do cleaner work. There is a couple spots that are like you can go as dirty as you want. Like there's a spot out here called like Main Tap that I know a lot of like the dirtier sets go over there. I think a lot of the later comic shows, like the later open mics, are a little bit dirtier. But for the most part, I think for me and my schedule and where I happen to live in San Diego, I just seem to be gravitating towards relatively cleaner mics. I'm not saying squeaky clean at all, but I've noticed for myself, I've put together my San Diego. I've produced two shows and I just did one just on last Sunday, but I decided to put together a fundraising comedy show for the San Diego Food Bank. And I know
right.
up in Poway, and it was really successful. I mean, very successful for my first ever show. I think the first one we did 75 pounds of food and raised about $900 from nothing. So that was cool. And then my second show, I just looked at the numbers and we raised $1,218 and like 25 pounds of food. But because it was in a restaurant, in that's like kind of a family friendly restaurant where it's like it's a beer garden with food and drinks, but people can bring their kids just in case. I wanted to, just say, hey, let's do it clean, but also the people that would be donating to organizations like that have that money to spend, they prefer a little bit cleaner comics. So I was going to like community groups in Poway or, a couple other spots or like Moms of Poway and things like that. So I'd like to kind of continue on to try to do more charity work. And I think eventually, I actually was just emailing yesterday with a gentleman with the American Cancer Society because on Saturday the 28th, a couple days ago, myself and a couple other comics that can work clean did a little comedy set for them for their Relay for Life at Westview High School out here. And, it was a smaller thing. It was put on by the students and everything. But I'm like, okay, I'm not going to talk about putting my thumb in somebody's butthole in front of a bunch of 17-year-olds. So I'm going to talk about like, silly cleaning the house a leaf blower, clean sets, right?
Right. They might be
Yeah.
watching
So,
Euphoria though, so there's that
I mean,
too.
that's the thing. One of the guys, he was like, tiptoeing over material. I almost felt like I went too clean on that set, where I felt like I like crossed the border from being like clean and quirky to cringe a little bit. But it's fine. I am trying to
Hey.
impress a bunch of 17-year-olds, so, so
We are all just looking for validation from whoever's in the crowd. I understand that.
exactly. But I got some like some of them came up yesterday like, oh my goodness, that's so silly, that's so funny, that I'm like, okay, I got some of you. I'm like, oh, okay, you guys were just laughing on the inside. That's very sweet of you.
Hey, if you get 17-year-olds to externalize anything, that's
Mhm.
pretty great on your part. So and I didn't mean to like really get at the clean comedy thing. It interests me in a sense that I am jealous of comics who can like work really clean and like kill a room. And I also know I never want to like lean on being dirty either. Like, I feel
Mhm.
like you can tell when someone, what the saying is, like, they broke the effometer. Like, and we can't curse on here, but I don't want to do that for your purposes. I get it, but we don't
No,
know
it's
each other.
you can say I've trust me.
It's okay.
I'm usually a potty mouth. The clean comedy has been a, a, a fun challenge for me to be as clean as possible. That's
Yeah.
I don't mind cursing. I've just noticed because when I was taking my first comedy class, it's like, hey, what if you want to get booked more places or have more options to get booked? You know,
Hmm.
is try to start writing things cleaner.
Yeah, and even if I'm touching on topics that wouldn't be appropriate for something that's a clean comedy show, I
Hmm.
don't need the language to be too much. Like, I want to try and get to the point of being funny without, like, it's more like sprinkled in. That's what I mean. Like, I hate when someone, like, I shouldn't say hate, but it's just with, like, some people that are novices, whatever it may be. It's like the curse is the punchline, and I don't. That doesn't make sense to
Hmm.
me. You're not going to get a laugh out of me for that, right? Like, you see people try
Yeah.
that. I think sometimes early on I've run into that. I'm just kind of like, oh, like, that
Hmm.
seems like lazy writing. Uh, so,
Yeah.
I'm being too critical here, but in terms of the San Diego Food Bank work, I saw that on your Instagram, and that interested me. Are you involved in, like, the nonprofit world? Because that's my background. That's why I'm interested. I saw you doing a lot of charity shows and things like that.
It's something I would like to be involved in more. It was just one of those things where, like I said, growing up very, very poor, and there was many a times where, like, I remember being at school and being so hungry where, like, that little square piece of pizza was the only
Mhm.
thing I'd eat for the day, and, like, drinking a lot of. So it was one of those things where I'm like, hey, I want to give back. And what first planted the seed specifically for the San Diego Food Bank is what was happening in our political climate last year when all of the SNAP benefits were frozen.
Yes.
And I was like, there's going to be so many kids that are going to be hungry and families. And what about our seniors? Because my parents are well off, or, like, well, I don't have to worry about them on that aspect, but it's like I know that that's a very common thing is there's, if people are on a fixed income and they need that and all of those benefits are frozen. So that's why I wanted to step in and be like, hey, let's try to, if we have a microphone, we should use it, you know? So
You.
yeah, use it for good. See if, since we have a platform, might as well try to make some good and make some kind of difference, right? So that was my mentality and why I started doing that. But now I'm wanting to do more and I want to have a chance to give back. And yeah, dick jokes
That's
for a
fantastic.
purpose.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And the SNAP situation really, it really bothered me last year. So I've worked in nonprofit for a decade plus, and I had taken a step away from my organization that I still work for now. So working somewhere else, and it was fascinating that people don't know what that, like, don't even know what SNAP is, didn't really understand the implications. And in Philly, that was going to kick, I think almost 500,000 people. There's 400 and some odd thousand people were going to lose their benefits, and that was
Mm-hmm.
always communities that I've always worked in. We had a meal distribution as part of, like, the other services. So when I saw the food bank, I was really curious about that. It is important work, and I think for me it was important not to, like, sometimes you get jaded and you hear, like, oh, we've been giving out food to this neighborhood forever, da, 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 da. And it's like, people need to eat. Like,
Yeah,
yeah, that's not okay. That's not the only solution to the problems that we have here, right? There are systemic issues of deindustrialization and whatever. That's for a different podcast if I start a
mm-hmm.
nonprofit
Yeah,
podcast. But sometimes I think, what I say is, like, if you can run programs and, like, yeah, teach a man to fish, but if you can, like, feed him along the way, why not? What's
exactly.
There's no loss there. Um, Not creating lazy people or whatever anybody,
Yeah,
that's there's a lot of
and to
pushback
even
on.
qualify for those programs, it's like you have to be for example, I believe, like, to qualify for, like, the senior meal program, you have to make less than 20K a year.
Oh yeah.
So that's people that are, like, really hurting, or they're on a fixed income. Or what about people that have had, like, have been like a stay-at-home wife and then their spouse passes away, then they have nothing,
Mhm.
like that's all right. Like I said, that's a different podcast. We can go down that
No, it
path.
is a different podcast, but you're exactly right. I think the people that don't want to fund that a lot of the times don't ever think that don't look at it through the lens of, I could be in that line someday, anything could happen and I can be in that line. And that's an important perspective to keep. But we could get back to
Yeah.
the yucks.
Yeah. Get back to
So back to the jokes. So before you jumped into stand up last year,
Mhm.
what were you doing prior? What's your career? If you want to share, if you're
Sure.
comfortable with that.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
actually, up until just recently, I was working at a nursery as an office manager and HR assist. Plant nursery,
Okay.
not
Not
children.
humans.
No, plant
Yeah.
babies. Not, yeah, those are much easier. Uh,
Yeah.
so I was working as that, but it was one of those things where at the time with, like the main director of the store, I could never get weekends off. And it was just one of those things where it's like the nature of the business is if you were a manager, even if I did primarily more of the office stuff, it's still you had to work every weekend. And so, yeah. And then I just didn't really know how to get into comedy until, like I was mentioned earlier, my friend who did Toastmasters decided to try it. She said this was a really good comedy class if I ever did magically find a way to get Saturdays off. And then that's what I was doing. But I was mostly also going to jiu-jitsu and stuff like that. And then I've just had like a lot of other things juggling, where I was like, my dad was going through a bunch of health issues. So I was like helping him with medications and like going to the VA hospital and all that stuff. And,
Mhm.
just kind of balancing life while, also maintaining a relationship and work and school. So, because I'm still in the process of getting like certification degree for human resources management. But yeah, so that's what I was doing before. And now,
Okay.
as of just like earlier today's Tuesday, last week, some changes happened at work where first they cut my hours and then they decided to randomly decide to terminate me for being late. I think it's because I have learned a lot about HR law and I may have mentioned some things and I don't think they appreciated that. So I have more time to do comedy.
Oh, okay. Well, there's the silver lining there. Yeah. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, I'm sorry. I know that's happened to a lot of people
it's
right
okay.
now. Like, no, just the last
Yeah.
guy, somebody I interviewed before, I might cut this. Sorry. He kind of started that way. And I thought he was going to tell me a funny story about his job. And then he told me about getting laid off. And I was like, all right, sorry. I'm sorry to hear
Yeah.
about that. But yeah, but,
I'm grateful to be in a position where I've been pretty good at savings. So I have like a little cushion. It's not a forever cushion, but it's a cushion to where I can kind of I don't have to stress out immediately.
yeah.
Yes, the job market is abysmal and San Diego is
Hmm.
expensive. But
Yeah.
lucky for me, I grew up below the poverty line for most of my life, so I know how to make things stretch.
You can, yeah, you know how to survive. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, that's that's a good way to look at it. Um, so this is going to seem like a hard pivot, but like the comedy class, um, was your first open mic? First, pause. Let me. Do you remember obviously your first open mic and what was that experience like?
Yes, actually. Okay, so the way that the comedy class setup was is Jesse Egan's fantastic. So it's ran at the Mic Drop Comedy, but it's in like their gold room, which is where they also do their open mic. So I didn't do an open mic right the same day as class, but I waited a couple weeks because it was like a 6-week course and it worked out perfectly because we would get out of class and then the open mic between class ending and the start of the open mic was like a 30-minute buffer
Great.
in the same room. So I didn't even have to
Yeah.
drive anywhere in my car. So
Yeah.
that was really cool. And I remember like recording my first set and I actually got um, pretty damn good feedback for my first ever set. And that was cool. And then I kind of have kept on keeping on. But
Hmm.
one of the things that I really enjoyed about how Jesse ran his class is he's been doing it for 20 years and he ran each class like a show. So we'd go and we'd sit down and we'd talk about, some of the fundamentals of like the rules of three, things to try to keep in mind, mic etiquette, da, da, da. And then he's like, okay, so now you guys have your sets. Let's get it going. And then each one of us had a chance to like be the host. He would dim the lights, have the PA system, and like we'd run it like a show. And then he is like writes like I don't know how he writes so fast. He could probably be in like the fastest writer on earth. And he writes all this crazy notes while you're doing your sets. And then he gives you really good feedback so you can apply it to the next time, or if you want to try different sets. But I think that really helped with um, feeling more confident going out into foreign open mics outside of Mic Drop and going to, there's used to be this place that was a restaurant called Sincuni that was an Italian Japanese fusion restaurant. Yes. They have a really good like miso paste based pizza. Anyway, they have an open mic there. And the person that was running it was
Okay.
really, really nice. And they would let me know if I need to start over because I know we're having like an internet bog. Um, really nice. And he was primarily trying to do more PG 13 ish. And he had just started that open mic. And then he partnered with another community person. And so they started this thing called Crafts and Comedy. So this local artist would come in and set out a bunch of stuff for like crafting and stuff like that while we do comedy, which was all of Alex's idea, which I thought was really cool. But he was like, hey, the only thing is because of this, we need it to be clean comedy. I'm like, oh, okay. So then I got to develop more of my clean comedy sets. But we had a lot of fun, and that was like my usual go-to spot. And then there's a couple of, there's like so many different mics. There's a mic every single day of the week, and you can try different locations. I know probably one of the spots is everyone loves going downtown to Madhouse, but A, I don't want to drive that far. B, I don't want to deal with parallel parking or parking at night. C, I turn into a pumpkin at, like I said, I am 37. I'm not going to go to an open mic that starts at 9:30 p.m. So, I'm sorry.
I ran into that. I ran into that last night. I went out. The mic was starting. Mic was probably starting at 8:30, and which is also somewhat of a late start. I like one that starts at 8 at the latest. They canceled last minute. By the time I was home, it was back on, but they canceled due to a host emergency. I went to another one in the same neighborhood. They normally start at 9. They weren't starting until 10. And part of me was like, I got in my head of like, do I really want this? But it's like, what am I? I had to be out of the house at 7 a.m. to take my father to a cardiologist appointment. So I'm like, I'm 40 years old. I kind of have to.
Yeah, I have responsibilities.
I have responsibilities. I could probably get to a mic tomorrow night and it'll be fine. It wasn't for not trying, but for lack of effort. But yeah, I get it. It's kind of like you want to find that sweet spot, and you don't have to be chasing every mic all night. I may have a different perspective on that in a year, but for the moment, I think getting to what I like and making sure there's an audience and I can work on things is important. But I'm with you there of just kind of want to get home early, I think is the bottom line.
I mean, I think I should eventually do it, especially with my newfound time in my schedule. I'll try it once and go down there. Because there's also like a cool spot called like Yellow Door that I've been meaning to do. But there's just, like I said, there's so many different mics through the week. So I am trying to go to at least one mic a week. That's my usual thing. Or I'll do, I was in another comedy class because it just keeps me on writing and stuff like that. And it keeps me disciplined. So I usually try to at least go to one a week, sometimes two. There's one that's really close to my house that I usually try to go to. And then there's one that I'm going to go to tonight. Starts at 7:30, but it's not too far to get to. And I love the host and I've already signed up on it. So yeah, like I have like my usual haunts that I go to.
Mm-hmm.
So
how do you feel about, you seem like you're a very gregarious person. How do you feel about the networking aspect? Is that difficult? Or are you finding like, I don't know, what's been your experience there and trying to get into the scene? As you can tell, I might be struggling a little, but my scene's a little young.
Yes.
So
got you. You know what? Honestly, I feel that I probably had a leg up when it came to the networking because I took a structured comedy class and I was able to immediately network with people that are wanting to advance their comedy careers, B, already either run shows, or C, are well connected in other areas to either venues or things like that because they're investing into a class. So that's usually a good way to like, we're all learning together. Hey, I know you from this class. I've I've actually been pretty good with the networking, and even just as simple as just being polite, asking questions. Um, that's kind of where it was at. Like now know like if I want to get on the mic drop one day, I'm just like, okay, make a tape that's a little bit more on the clean side, have like 10 minutes set, minimal crowd work, and then you can submit it. Now we do get a lot of submissions, but that's a good way to kind of get your foot in the door. Or if you kind of do like have a show brought there, or if you do some kind of, obviously there's like barking and stuff like that, so that's kind of one of those things. I've been working a lot with someone that's became a really good friend of mine. She has a background in like marketing and business marketing, and something else is like her actual like MBA background, and so she knows what she's talking about. So she knows how to do some of that stuff, like creating the online presence, getting the website, and also she's really good at just like reaching out to spots that maybe haven't been tapped into yet. That's something I'm working on. Like I'm thinking like there's certain areas in North County, like the middle really is like an untapped area. So because most of the stuff's either way downtown or it's like way up in like Temecula, Murrieta area. So
Okay.
yeah, which I know you have no idea what I'm saying because
I've heard of Temecula, but
yeah.
um, so, no, that's helpful to hear because I think about the my experience of being like a promoter and a producer.
Mm-hmm.
That immediately made people gravitate toward you, or like I had something for them. So, and there's still a lot of people on the scene that I know from back then, but we've all kind of grown up, and I think what the barrier is there a little bit right now is, and part of why I started this podcast is that most of the people on the scene are between 25 and 30, right? I have a decade on them. So I also don't want to come off as like a creepy guy, but I think the thing is showing up again, the consistency. What I'm learning is that showing my face at the same mics and being good. I feel like what I like about this is that as the promoter, whatever, and I can be honest about this, it seems like it's a bit of a cheat code to be on the scene. We need promoters, we need producers, but I have to earn everybody's respect in performing. And I like
Mm-hmm.
that about it. That is the challenge for me that I enjoy. And I think once that happens, it's easier to people want to connect with you after your set and things like that. So, and I don't know if that would sound obvious to anyone. Like I've been in,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. I've been in fundraising forever. So it's not like I'm
Mhm.
speaking to people, but this world, it seems like a little, there's more of it. Again, I feel like you have to earn it.
Yeah.
Or,
I think
and
it's
to be
really interesting
polite.
to it's interesting that you mentioned that you have a much like younger comedy scene, because I feel like out here, maybe it's just of where the spots I've been frequenting. A majority of us are all around like in our 30s to 40s, believe it or not.
Yeah.
So that's like a majority of the comics I've ran into. There's like a handful of like little babies that I've
Hmm.
seen personally. Granted, I'm also not going downtown to the super, super late mics, so
Right.
maybe it's just where I've been. So because that's maybe why I've had a pretty decent time networking, because they are all my same age, so or
Hmm.
older than me. So that's been kind of helpful, because I've seen like I think one of our main guys that he puts on like a show in PB, like he's like 55. And then there's the person who I'm going to, it's like the EA comedy. I think they're all in their 40s ish. I have no idea how old How is. I can never tell. So like he could be 20, he could be 50. I have no idea. so um yeah, but
Yeah.
yeah, so that's I wouldn't have, I guess maybe I just haven't came across that particular thing of, the younger folks, because I mean you don't seem creepy. So I think that's
Oh,
good
well,
as long as you're
thank you. I appreciate that. That sounds good. Yeah, I think that's just me being in my head. I mean, I think guys should be worried about being creepy, and then it prevents you from being creepy.
yeah.
So yeah, and it might be something that I'm a little hung up on or a little like focused on because I'm very interested in just again starting with comics. You started quote unquote later. Philly again is we have so many colleges around here surrounding the city. Also, what you just said about the downtown mics, that's where like scenes out in my area, not that I'm in the burbs, are more people that are like, I think late 30s, things like that. It's the city late night mics where I think there's, and part of it is there are cliques, obviously, of comics and guys that are working together on projects and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. Also, somebody that enjoys sociology of just observing this whole
Mm-hmm.
well. Um, so, a couple other like actual questions that I had.
Sure.
What do you think are some references in your comedy that might be generational, and how do you make them timeless? What are you nostalgic for?
Oh, I have. I mean, and most of it comes from my life of like current things and, bad dates and things like that. But I realized I have this joke about how I used to have a bad habit of trying to rescue men like they were a one-eyed beagle in a Sarah McLachlan commercial. And that worked for some audiences. But I realized I had to adapt to it because I had a crowd and it was all like 20 somethings. And I was like, oh, they have no idea what that fucking commercial is. They've never seen a regular TV. And I was like, oh, you know what? Sometimes on like TikTok, those like animal rescue videos will come up. So I changed the verbiage and the wording so it's set a little bit better.
Okay.
But I think a lot of I was trying to think. I tried to stay away from most cultural references unless it's like super super relevant in the moment. I think let me try to think of one that I use. House, leaf blower, voodoo. um I mean, I think I try to stay to things that are relatively relatable. Like everyone's had like, a bad date. Or I have this joke about there's one time I dated this guy that I thought because he told me that he would volunteer for like beach cleanup. I'm like, oh great, that's wonderful. He's an environmentalist. He must have a good heart. And then it found out that that good heart was court ordered. And like, and then I have another bit about his bad tattoos. And it's like, man, and like I couldn't say like prison tat. No, I'm not gonna say that. And I was like, he had like DIY tattoos, and I'm like, they were so bad they looked like kids' drawings that weren't good enough to post on the fridge. And I'm still trying to work on that joke right there because sometimes that hits, or I'm not sure if all of a sudden people get self conscious about their tattoos. So I try to balance it out. But as for cultural references that I need to adapt, I think the only one that really comes to mind is the Sarah McLachlan commercial versus animal rescue videos on TikTok, is the only way I've had to like switch it over.
Okay.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's interesting. The tattoo situation's funny because I'm working on something myself about like my tattoos are dirtbag tattoos, and just saying like they don't fit like I talk about kind of like the neighborhood I grew up in and how that's so different. Like people don't expect me to be from there and whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
but I talk about like my dirtbag tattoos and I'm working on something like I hit play all the hits. I have like loyalty, Veni Vidi Vici, like those kind of things.
Do
So
you have your last name tattooed across your shoulders on your back?
No, dude, I'll tell
Okay.
you. Actually, this is a bit. This is part of a bit that I'm working on. But I do have a nick. My nickname was like my first tattoo that I got, and then that's like standard. But I have street signs that intersect, and they say humble beginnings, and you couldn't just stop there. Like I literally have like this very remedial drawing of the skyline of Philly above those above those. So I mean, it's funny. I'm glad you're laughing. So it'll work. But I didn't do it at a mic on Friday, and it's kind of funny. Later on in that night, the host slash headliner of the mic was talking about his tattoos, and
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the things sometimes I get in my head of like, if someone's doing a bit on the topic that I'm talking about, if he were to go before me, I would definitely not have done that. But now I'm in my
Mm-hmm.
head, like, I'm going to see this guy at Mike's. Now I have this bit, but I feel like it's something I could approach and talk to him about. Be like, I have a tattoo bit as well. His
Mm-hmm.
was funny about his experience smoking crack, and that's why he has this like tattoo of like two. I think it's like two cats and the earth on his chest, something wild.
That sounds hysterical.
But go back to what you said. I'm sorry but
No, that's so
about like
funny though.
people getting self conscious about it. I think
Well,
it's just
I
necessary. It's part of the
balanced it.
course. Yeah.
Yeah, it's part of it. And I think the way I balanced it is like, I'm like, okay, hey, all of us probably have a tattoo in here that we're not super proud of. I'm like, the problem isn't having a bad tattoo, it's having multiple and being proud of them.
Right.
You know?
Right. If you
And then
have
I
no
go
shame.
into this story in part two. I'm like, this guy said no, he's not ever going to get a cover up. He wants to represent. I'm like, dude, we're on the way to the dog groomer to pick up your Pomeranian. What are you representing? True stories from my life.
That's that's great. I mean, you can't that the true stories are the best. I mean, obviously it's what we have to draw from. That's really funny. Um, what or who makes you laugh?
Oh, yes. Okay. So Kyle Kinane, number one,
Kind of things.
favorite.
Very funny.
I'm like, we're just talking about bad tattoos. I don't know if it'll be a bad tattoo, but I'm this close to getting a big dick back somewhere on me. I don't know if you've heard that joke. Just a
No.
bat with a big old dick. Just Kyle Kinane, big dick bat. That's
I
gonna
will
be
look for that.
it's so
Okay.
good. So love him. I really enjoy Daniel Sloss.
I don't know who
Um,
that is. I have to look him up.
so he did a couple specials on Netflix, and then he did two of them over on HBO. He is fantastic. He's also like dark storytelling and kind of philosophical. I tend to gravitate towards some storytelling comics, unhinged storytelling comics. Another one I really like is a more recent one who I'm like impressed with how much material he puts out all the time. But Joshua Johnson, he's now on The Daily Show.
Oh,
Has the twist
yes.
braids. Yeah, he's fantastic. He
Yeah.
really knows how to utilize pausing because it's like he gets people to hang on every word as he takes you on this story journey. That's really fascinating because it's like for me, I have a habit of speaking in long sentences. So it's like I know that we're constantly told to like cut the fat, cut the fat. I'm like, okay, well, how does that balance out? Because I also love Mike Birbiglia, who I liked his earlier stuff more. Yeah, exactly. So it's like, how do I cut the fat when I'm still the storytelling comic? So I'm trying to again, I'm still growing on my journey. So I'm still working on what works, what doesn't. I think I've found a way to shorten my little punchlines along the way and pepper in as I'm doing my storytelling. Um, and of course, Taylor Tomlinson, she's always been her most recent special is probably my favorite, honestly. The most recent one that just came out, The Prodigal Daughter.
I haven't
Um,
watched that one. I've watched her. Been a while. I know I've seen her YouTube special. I do like her on podcasts. She's always very
mhm.
funny. Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
Josh Johnson he's been on the Daily Show I think for a while. I met him years ago and never would
Yeah.
have. I mean, not that I never would. He was great, but like
Mhm.
the level of fame that he's achieved and just his talent, like you said, of putting out that much material. It's always nice to like go on Instagram and see him because he's so topical that I'm like, you came up with this yesterday. It's just
Mhm.
wild. He's just a very smart comic. So yeah, I like that
Oh,
too.
yeah.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
and then I have a one-liner comic that I absolutely love. He's very funny, kind of like silly, goofy one-liners, and he has Tourette's, so it's amazing how he's able to focus on his jokes, do his material, but still, it's like when you're watching it, his Tourette's isn't that distracting. But
Hmm.
Benny Feldman,
Yeah.
definitely recommend looking him up. He's fantastic. I like him a lot. Um, and I'm probably missing like I love Nikki Glazer. She was one of the first female comics like I really gravitated towards.
Okay.
And who else? I've those are the ones that are just off the top of my head. Like I've watched copious amounts of stand up. So
No, yeah, I
yeah.
have as well. I just saw Ronan Hirschberg. I don't
Mm,
know if he's very funny, and I
yeah.
was following him on Instagram. He was at the Don't Tell comedy show, so I didn't know I was going to see him, and I just saw him
Oh.
on Saturday night. So that was fun too. Those are pretty good
Hmm.
shows. I know they do good stuff nationally. Um,
Hmm.
I'm just going to ask you one more question.
Yeah.
So, what? Let me think. I almost want to rephrase what I've written here. What would your younger self think about your comedy pursuit now?
I think she'd be very happy. I think that I I think she would have been pissed that I waited so long. But other than that, though, like, because like I said, I remember starting to write little jokes and stand up because I always wanted to do it, like when I was in my 20s. And then I had that stupid ex that's like, oh, that's not funny. Like, oh, this joke's about me. I don't like it. And like
Mm.
really just discouraged me from any of that. So then I just never did it. But now it's like, hey, look, you can do awesome things. I do have to say it is kind of nice being older because just like there's what's her name, Sarah Horrister or something like that. She's like a Westeros or not Westeros. I'm butchering her name. Anyways, there's this comic that she sings, and she has this whole song about being old enough to not give a fuck. You know, that's kind of how I felt when I turned. When I finally decided to start comedy, I'm like, all right, well, I don't give as many fucks because now I'm 30 at the time, 36. Um, and also it's kind of nice to be, I don't have to worry about like walking to my car as much because now I'm statistically not what they're looking for human trafficking. So that's cool. so, so there's some perks. It's
You could go to those later mics now.
I go to these late mics. No one's gonna want me. It's fine. It's
Oh,
perfect. I can
you pros,
I
you
can
got.
be in peace.
Oh God, that's really funny. Is there anything you'd want to like share or add? What you have
Uh
coming up? What you're looking forward to?
Oh yeah. So like I said, I thought it was really cool that the a gentleman from the American Cancer Society reached out to me. I sent him a clip of my stuff and he thought it was hilarious and he's really excited about me being on the next big relay for life that's down like by the water in San Diego. So it's gonna be like a huge crowd thing. He thought that'd be really cool. So I'm gonna be involved in that. Like that's not till August. But let's see. For me, as like you know, a little victory is I am going to be on a show. Let's see, pull it up really quick. Toot, toot, toot. I mean, on like a little local show that is produced by, they go by their name like Slap Diego, and they do Saturday night comedy at Mission Brewing, which it's one of those things where it's like the next level up from just like all of the littler shows. It's like a little bit higher up, and they picked me. So that's really cool. Also a little nerve wracking, but I think I'll do well. I know I'm funny. I just got to make sure I'm funny on that day, you know, uh, and within the time frame. Uh, so those are some things that I think is kind of cool. And then, yeah, it looks like I've went from having like only like one show or two little shows to now I have like, look at me, I have 5 shows for April. That's so cool. So that's kind of
Congratulations.
it.
That's
Thanks.
sick. That's great.
Yeah,
I am on one show in June, so I can't plug that right now. I don't know when this will come out, but that's really great. I think you're going to be a repeat guest as this comes on. We can actually talk more comedy stories. It doesn't have to always be a full interview.
awesome.
You go by Gretchen Dee, correct?
I go by Gretchen Dee. Yeah.
Gretchen Dee. Well,
Yeah.
it's a pleasure to have met you. And
I'm so glad I reached
yeah,
out and commented. So
yeah,
yeah, this
thank
is
you.
great.